This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this.
Good morning. Wednesday the 29th of June. Another day. Yeah. Jim McMahon has a debate scheduled in Parliament tomorrow. It's called an adjournment debate. It doesn't mean it's been cancelled. It's actually called an adjournment debate. It's basically a committee debate. So those of you who are telling you it's cancelled, it hasn't been cancelled. It's the name of the debate. I suppose it's the it's from the same places where those are telling you you contact the Attorney General when someone has a coffee in a Costa after they've left the court. Very, very good morning to all of you. I'm asked why I'm doing these in the morning. Well, it's because I spend the nights reading and analysing the report because I need complete silence. So what I've been doing is going to bed early, so I go to bed about 9:30. I wake up about 2 o'clock, and I spend 4 or 5 hours on the debate on the report. Have another couple of hours of sleep, wake up, get my daughter off to school, get my composure, and I share this. That's how we're working our way through this. I'll probably do the same tomorrow. I'll probably do the same Friday and throughout next week, and you'll see what I do and you'll see the value in it. Hopefully you will all see the value in it. Thank you very, very much to the 3 or 4 of you who yesterday bought me some coffees, and thank you already to the 2 people who've supported me as soon as I've gone live. So thank you very, very much. This is the only way I'm sustaining myself. It's the simple truth of the matter. This is well, let's be honest, no one else is going to do it. I'm sure there are people capable of doing it. I'm not disputing that, but no one else is doing it, and no one else has been doing it. And if you've read the newspaper articles published in the Manchester Evening News, the Oldham Times, and so on, written by Charlotte Green, who is clearly struggling with all of this, increasingly struggling, spinning the official narrative. If I do not speak out and if I do not share what I do share, the official narrative becomes something else completely. This is gone. Our children have been failed, and our children will continue to be failed, and they simply get away with it, which is really what the adjournment debate tomorrow is all about. The purpose of Jim McMahon's debate is to present an alternative reality based upon the fiction. I think the councillor, Brian Hoban, said the title should have been Once Upon a Time, and it should have been finished Happily Ever After. They will get away with creating this fairy tale, this alternative reality, and in their alternative reality, they are the ones that try to protect our children, and we are the ones that are the criminals. From the outset, from the minute from before that report was published, the 3 MPs for Oldham, Jim McMahon, Debbie Abrams, and the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, released a shared statement trying to attempt to exonerate themselves, and that this was not a political cover-up. The fact that our children were groomed and gang raped, and this was a forced admission in this report, was completely ignored. And instead, what you have is this alternative reality that they weren't to blame, so everything's okay. The purpose of McMahon is to create this alternative reality, get it in Parliament, and try and rescue his political career and continue to demonize ours and portray us, the people of this town, as the extremists and the far-right racists. Just bear with me. I want to show you how we're doing. So we're still on our Facebook ban, and clearly once the Facebook ban's lifted, we still got 45 or 50 or 60 days. So the best part of 2 months where the content won't be promoted. So YouTube is really the only way in which we're going to go and continue with this for as long as we can. And I want to show you how we're doing before we continue. So this is a live stream. Now you can see 111 views. We're at, but I want to show you this. This was the testimony I released after it's been published. Best part of 1,700 people have actually viewed the full contents of the video, but this is the impressions. This is what you need to look at. 22,000 people since we released that video on Sunday night. And the only way the impressions and the content is promoted by YouTube, so you're all clear, the only way it's done is by you liking and sharing. If you don't like and share, YouTube does not pick up on it. So I've got over 60 people, 113 people viewing now, 60 people viewing live with me right at this moment, and I have 31 likes. So if you take value in this, and you can't afford to financially support me, which is fine, times are tough for all of us. Times are tough for all of us. We don't have MP salaries, and we can't claim our TV licenses on expenses, and we sure as hell don't have our toilets fitted out to the tune of the best part of £100,000 on the taxpayer. So, exactly, John. It's as simple as that. It costs you nothing, and if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be here. Really, if you can't do that, no one even knows you're sharing. That's the other thing. This isn't like Facebook, where someone might find out. If you're a council employee, I have so many friends of mine who are council employees, so many friends of mine who are police officers who work in various forms of law enforcement, law firms, respectable careers, and they are avid followers of what we do, but they're scared of sharing on Facebook. They're scared of even watching live on Facebook because their names will come up as though they've joined live. On YouTube, that doesn't happen. So you can remain anonymous on YouTube. So if you don't like, if you don't share, then I don't know why you're here, because it's the least you can do to fight this alternative narrative that is being promoted by the mainstream media and being reinforced by Amanda Chadderton, the want to be Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and now an adjournment debate in Parliament tomorrow by Jim McMahon. I've got the link to the live debate. I will put it up. I will get it shared with Yvonne and the others, and I'm sure they'll put it up on We Are All Oldham and distribute accordingly. Thank you. And it's the only way. This is how we've got this far. Let's be honest. This is the only way the only reason this is where it was. And Monday night was significant for us. We packed out the council chamber in a way it has never been packed out before. And we held them to account in a way they've never been held to account before. And we exposed them. We absolutely exposed them in a way they've never been exposed before. And the only reason we were able to do that is because of our ability to communicate directly with each other, and for you to then be sharing that with everyone you know, and they share it with everyone they know, and it cascades. And this is why this town is now in a position that Rochdale never was, Rotherham never was, Telford never was, Kirklees, Huddersfield, Calderdale, Newcastle, you name it, everywhere where they have gotten away with it. This town is somewhere else. This town is somewhere else because we have educated ourselves, we have educated each other, and we have had the courage to share, to speak out, and to make a stand, and to say justice is not just the admittance of fault. Justice is about holding to account those that were wrong. Because fundamentally, that is the system that we exist on. We hold to account those who are wrong. And if we do not hold to account those who are wrong, then we might as well be living in a dictatorship where those in power can simply do what they want and lead their lives according to a different set of rules above and beyond the rest of us. And I still do not believe that in this country of ours we are there. And I will fight everything I can, because as I said to people that night, we will hold them to account. I want to play something to you. Just give me a second. I want to play something to you. And it is the speech that was shared by Robert and then Lewis. I did not want to share those speeches until they'd put it up themselves, because I'm not that sort of man. They've now put it up themselves on their own social media accounts, and now I think it's right for me to share, and then I'll analyse. Just give me one moment.
And before I start, I'm going to address the bench. I have never seen such an unprofessional attitude from a senior officer of the council who has sat here most of the evening with a smug grin on his face. Not acceptable, Mr. Jones. Not acceptable at all. You answer to us. It is not the other way around. It's not acceptable at all. The assurance review into child sexual exploitation has finally been published. It is a damning indictment of the failures of both Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police. This review should not be the end of the matter. It should be the beginning. It simply is not good enough for apologies and mea culpas from the council leader and the chief constable, and for scripted answers from the panel here tonight. Greater Manchester Police failed Sophie on numerous occasions. They failed to act, and a victim was let down. What action did they take against the officers who failed her? And if no action was taken, what will Greater Manchester Police do now to ensure those officers who failed her are held to account? Is it any wonder that Greater Manchester Police is in special measures? They've announced the launch of Operation Sherwood recently, but this only looks at a handful of cases. Can Greater Manchester Police give an assurance today that they will follow the evidence and open up new cases, including any criminal activities by those in public office? Madam Mayor, this assurance review's terms of reference were far too narrow and written by Oldham Council. How can this be seen as independent in any way? How can this be seen as sound and robust? This assurance review is nothing but a cover-up. It's a whitewash. It is not designed to shine sunlight on the failures of Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police. Rather, it has been spun as a lessons learned review, and now Oldham Council expect all 60 elected members to toe their line and agree with it. No, no, no. Madam Mayor, I've never been a yes man, and I will not dance to the tune of the officers of this council and agree with the outcomes of this review. What we all want to see in the public gallery tonight, and those of us on this side, is justice for the victims of CSE and the grooming gangs. Now is the time for sunlight to be the best disinfectant. Now is the time for a public inquiry when this council does not set the terms of reference, and that any time frame for such an inquiry is widened. Nothing should be left out. And if that means it uncovers hundreds or thousands of cases of historic CSE, then so be it. After all, it was admitted by the former council leader on March the 16th this year that grooming gangs are still operating in Oldham today. And then she instructed her Labour councillors, the majority of whom are in this room tonight, to vote down a motion to bring in a government. We are all corporate parents, and now is the time for all of us to stand up and be counted and say that the assurance review does not go far enough. And given that Shabir Ahmed worked for Oldham Council and this was suppressed by this council, of which Councillor Chadden is now leader, including many sat beside her, will she now demand the resignation of Daddy's mates and support calls for public inquiry into her disgraced council?
I'm going to let her respond before I speak, because I want you to hear what she says before I present my take on it.
Councillor Barnes, I will answer as far as I can to what you say. I commissioned, or I agreed to commission this report when I was asked to do so, to open up this debate, this issue. And I would say to you, I listened carefully to what you said. You called the report both a damning indictment and a cover-up. Respectfully, I don't think it can be both. It's either one or the other. It's either a damning indictment because it has told things as they are, or it hasn't. I think it has told things that they are, but there is more. And let me say to you, if any victim of child sexual exploitation, current or historic, comes forward to Greater Manchester Police, I will ask the Chief Constable to ensure that every allegation is followed up to the full. And that's why I say to you, in the same way that I said to Councillor Murphy, this isn't the end of the story. This issue now is out in the open. And actually, it's not another review and another review. I think it's action, it's prosecution that I think the public of Oldham will want to see. And that is what we are committing to, myself, the Chief Constable, and Greater Manchester Police in Operation Sherwood. People are already trying to undermine Operation Sherwood in this room tonight. Well, why? When Operation Green Jacket has produced arrests, when Operation Lytton has produced charges and a criminal trial, how can it be in the interests of the people of Oldham for people to undermine Operation Sherwood, which will now act on this report?
Okay, let me just pause it there. I'm not in the business of needing to take 10 questions at once and then use it as a tactic not to answer questions. He made 2 points there, Andy Burnham. Yeah, Andy Burnham made 2 points there. The first point he made there is, how can it be an indictment and also a cover-up? He says it's a contradiction. It's not a contradiction, and Andy Burnham knows. But he takes you, the working class people of our town, as fools. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, the want to be Prime Minister, the want to be next Prime Minister, takes white working class people as fools. It's an indictment because it's proven that our children were groomed and gang raped, whilst they claimed otherwise. It's proven that Shabir Daddy Ahmed worked for Oldham Council for 18 years. 18 years. He was bankrolled by the council. And I've said this yesterday and I'll keep saying it until they arrest me, and I'll still keep saying it. Oldham Council paid for Shabir Ahmed to do what he did. The council in our town directly funded the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. Let that sink in. Oldham Council funded the grooming and gang rape of the town's children. It's a damning indictment because of that, and it's a cover-up. It's a cover-up because it restricts what we know and still continues to hide other things and continues to lie on other things. It's been forced to release some information that couldn't be hidden any longer and divert us away from what the hidden truths are that a public inquiry would confirm. And Andy Burnham, the want to be Greater Manchester Mayor, the want to be Prime Minister, how can we have a Prime Minister, someone who wants to be a Prime Minister, refuse to support a public inquiry into the now confirmed cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children? And I can't say a number. I can't say a number because this is the extent of the cover-up, because the report won't even say how many children. Not only did the report seek not to interview any children, the report won't even say how many children. So come on, Burnham, you're not going to become Prime Minister, you're a joke. And then he goes on about Operation Sherwood, and we're trying to undermine it. No. Operation Sherwood and all of the cases he's gone on about, all they do is go after the odd random Pakistani that they can still pick up. That's all they do. We are not just there. We want the prosecution of politicians, police officers and council officers who were complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our children. None of these operations go after those that many of us consider to be actually worse than members of the grooming gang. Because from my point of view, those who helped cover up the grooming gangs are worse than those who groomed them. I honestly believe that. Those who helped cover up, those in positions of authority who helped cover up the grooming gangs are worse than those who systematically groomed and gang raped our children. I get them idiots. I get those scumbags. They're criminals. But these are people in positions of power and responsibility tasked specifically to safeguard our children. And the first action of Chief Superintendent Chris Bowen's Operation Sherwood was to phone up and intimidate a victim that came forward and shared her testimony with us. That was one of the first actions of Operation Sherwood, was to go after victims. Operation Sherwood, you are right, Sally, is not fit for purpose from the offset. It is an attempt to divert and distract us. We're going after the grooming gangs. We don't want you just to go after the grooming gangs. And as Rotherham found out this week, when you play to the rules and you play to the game, you will get shafted. It took Rotherham 5 years, and what happened? Not a single police officer. They lied. They were exposed for lying, covering up, complicit. Not a single police officer was held to account. And that's what they want to do with you. They want to take you on this bullshit game of theirs, and where they get away with it and it's forgotten about. So that's what they want to do. And Robert made a specific point about daddy's mates. So let's hear Amanda Chadison, the leader of Oldham Council.
Councillor Chadderton.
Thank you. So, just a couple of things on the Shabir. So, a couple of things with regards to the Shabir Ahmed thing. I'm not going to agree to an independent review. I've just answered that with Councillor Arnott's question, so that's already been covered, so I won't go back on that ground. So, with regards to the Shabir Ahmed thing, now I was not...
So, she's confirmed she's not going to support a public inquiry. That is the leader of Oldham Council. That is the leader of Oldham Council, with 100 people there, this sham of a review, still having to force to admit that the council hired the Jimmy Savile equivalent. So Shabir Ahmed is the equivalent of what Jimmy Savile was. Shabir Ahmed is the grooming gang equivalent to Jimmy Savile. The council paid for him for 18 years. The council gave him references. The council closed down investigations against him. And once he was arrested, the council gave him references. And after he was convicted, the council hid from you and hid from me that they'd hired him for 18 years with access to children and families. And she is refusing to support a public inquiry into that. She claims, well, she has a daughter. and the leader of the council is refusing to support a public inquiry into how the council funded and supported the most prolific grooming gang ringleader this country has ever known.
Involved in those terms of reference, and I obviously wasn't leader when it came about.
So she's now distancing herself. She's now distancing herself from the terms of reference. She wasn't about when they came about. She's a liar. She sat on the cabinet. She's been a councillor since 2012 or 2013. She was a councillor who took over the role of Hughie MacDonald after he was sacked for exposing or trying to expose the shisha bars. So she's trying to distance herself from the terms of reference. Instead of simply saying the terms of reference are too narrow, she's trying to distance herself from the terms of reference. Why are you distancing? You don't agree with them, do you, Amanda? You don't agree with terms of reference that were just this little bit. So instead of saying she doesn't agree with them, she says she wasn't involved.
Understand it. It was the council that brought it to the attention of the reviewers that Shabir Ahmed worked here.
So that is an outright lie. That is an outright lie. She is claiming it is the council that brought to the attention of the reviewers that Shabir Ahmed worked for the council. No, Amanda Chadderton, it was I who brought it to the attention of the public that Shabir Ahmed was one of yours, and not just worked for the council, Amanda Chadderton, you gloss over. He was a member of the Labour Party, a very, very active member of the Labour Party. So no, we, the people of the town, raised it that Shabir Ahmed worked for the council, not you. Do you see that? Do you see how she's trying to take credit for something she never did? So lie, lie, deception, deception, and she's not even spoken for 10 seconds. She's not even spoken for 10 seconds. Sorry, I'm going to keep myself on here. It's just easier.
I didn't try to cover it up, as I understand it, and it was us that told the reviewers he worked here, and would they like to look into it, and that was one of the reasons it was expanded.
So it was her and her council that told the reviewers that he worked there, and it was one of the reasons it was expanded. No, right from the offset, the terms of reference that she, by the way, claimed she had nothing to do with, we forced that into the terms of reference. Well, there you go. Thank you, Sally. So she's neck deep in this, isn't she? She's neck deep in this. She's neck deep in this.
2011 and 14 to longer. So that's unfounded, that, and that was us that did it. I mean...
So it's unfounded. She's claiming it's unfounded, and they were the ones who are responsible for confirming Shabir Ahmed worked for the council. They are the ones responsible for confirming Shabir Ahmed worked for the council. Who believes that? Which one of you here believes Amanda Chadderton's claim? This is the leader of Oldham Council claiming her council were responsible for making the reviewers aware that Shabir Ahmed worked for the council. They were the ones responsible for making people aware that Shabir Ahmed worked for the council. Who? Who believes that? Yeah.
For context, when Shabir Ahmed started working here, I was 2 years old.
No one gives a damn how old you were when Shabir Ahmed started working in the council, because no one is asking you whether you knew They're asking about your council and the councillors in front of you. See that attempt at deflection? I was 2 years old. How can you hold me responsible? No one is holding you responsible for knowing about Shabir Ahmed when he worked at the council. See that deflection? It is cheap. It is a cheap, disgraceful political tactic. It is disgusting. It is absolutely filthy. It is a filthy, cheap political tactic of outrage. How dare you accuse me? No one was accusing her of knowing when Shabir Ahmed, because we can count. You may have been 2 years old, but that wasn't the question, was it? Will you condemn daddy's mates around you? What about daddy's mates, Amanda Chadderton? Why aren't you talking 2 yards in front of you?
When he left working here, it was 6 years before I came onto the council. I've never met the man, I never knew the man, I was never active in Labour Party politics.
She never met the man, she never knew the man, she was never active. No one asked her if she'd met the man, if she knew the man, if she was active in Labour Party politics. No one has asked that question. Robert Barnes did not ask that question about her. They asked that question about those around her. Daddy's mates, he called them. Daddy's mates. I'm just going to go backwards so you can hear exactly what Robert said, and then we'll bring it back here. So you'll have to bear with me whilst I slide this around a little bit, because it's important.
So be it. After all, it was admitted by the former council leader on March the 16th this year that grooming gangs are still operating in Oldham today. And then she instructed her Labour councillors, the majority of whom are in this room tonight, to vote down a motion to bring in the government. We are all corporate parents, and now is the time for all of us to stand up and be counted and say that the assurance review does not go far enough. And given that Shabir Ahmed worked for Oldham Council and this was suppressed by this council, of which Councillor Chadderton is now leader, including many sat beside her, will she now demand the resignation of Daddy's mates and support calls for a public inquiry into her disgraced council?
Will she now demand the resignation of Daddy's mates? Those sat beside her. Do you see? Do you see? She's answering and getting angry at stuff that was never even asked of her.
Undermine Operation Sherwood, which will now act on this report.
Here we go. This is your leader. Royton, you elected this woman.
Thank you. So, just a couple of things on the Shabir. So, a couple of things with regards to the Shabir Ahmed thing. I'm not going to agree to an independent review. I've just answered that with Councillor Arnott's question, so that's already been covered, so I won't go back on that ground. So, with regards to the Shabir Ahmed thing, now I was not involved in those terms of reference, and I obviously wasn't leader when it came about. As I understand it, it was the council that brought it to the attention of the reviewers that Shabir Ahmed worked here. We didn't try to cover it up, as I understand it, and it was us that told the reviewers he worked here, and would they like to look into it, and that was one of the reasons it was expanded from 2011 and 14 to longer. So that's unfounded that, and that was us that did it. I mean, for context, when Shabir Ahmed started working here, I was 2 years old, and when he left working here, it was 6 years before I came onto the council. I've never met the man, I never knew the man, I was never active in Labour Party politics at the time that he was a member or active in the local Labour Party. I do not know who know him, as I said previously, and I have no list. I struggle to see how can be held to account for that, and I had no involvement whatsoever in that, and that predates my time, certainly as leader, obviously, but it certainly predates my time on the council.
Okay, you can hear the rage from the crowd there. You can hear the rage from the public galleries, and I'm being contacted by some people saying they're disgusted with the behaviour of the public at the meeting. Now, clearly these are Labour Party stooges, because if your child was groomed and gang raped and then covered up, I don't think he'd just be shouting from the public gallery. It was my child that had happened to it. And I'm being honest with you here in terms of how I feel. I wouldn't be waiting behind the public gallery. I'd have climbed over that bloody perspex screen and dragged her by the scruff of the neck. That's what I would have done if it was my child that had been done to. So I think the crowd behaved impeccably. They demonstrated their anger, their frustrations at these barefaced lies and this continuation of deceit and deception. She does sound like Bashforth. In fact, Barrelgate Bashforth, his wife, and Amanda Chadderton, right now you've heard it, in the same way we campaigned in Chadderton South last year, in the all-out, the Recusant 9 focus will be in Royton South to take out these politicians that have blocked a public inquiry into the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. We will take Amanda Chadderton head on. We'll use this speech and what has took place, and we will take Barrelgate Bashforth, his wife, and Amanda Chadderton head on the streets of Royton South. That's what we will do this coming year. She uses the term "as I understand it" as a cop-out, so she can then say she didn't lie. She misunderstood. So that's why she uses the word "as I understand it." It's not true that is how she understands it, because the councillors in front of her, had active relationships with Shabir Ahmed. Moyeb Uddin, former senior old Lib Dem councillor, senior civil servant, put a Facebook video up. You've seen the Facebook video up. He's now directly challenging Abdul Jabbar, a senior civil servant from this country who lives in this town, Bangladeshi guy, raised it. As soon as he raised it, they tried to burn his house down. He is now openly challenging the deputy leader, Abdul Jabbar, to confirm his exact relationship with Shabir Ahmed, the most notorious ringleader of the grooming gangs in this country. The most notorious ringleader of the grooming gangs in this country. This council funded, this council protected, and then this council helped hide. And it wasn't just Abdul Jabbar that knew Shabir Ahmed. He was an active member of the Labour Party. There are other politicians sat in that room who nibbled samosas with him. Shabir Ahmed and these other politicians that Jim McMahon is standing in Parliament tomorrow and rewriting history and creating this alternative reality. There are many reasons why we need an independent inquiry in Oldham. But one of the most significant reasons has got to be the secret employment of Shabir Ahmed and his relationships with senior council officials, police officers, social workers. Who was involved with him? Where does this scandal go? Were other councillors raping children? Was Shabir Ahmed supplying children to other councillors? Was he paying off other staff at the Pakistani Community Centre and other places to turn a blind eye? Did they have a percentage in his takings? What did the police know? Why did the police, after arresting him, why did Greater Manchester Police, after arresting Shabir Ahmed, fail to notify Oldham Council? Was there political interference at that point? Throughout the night, Abdul Jabbar was asked to clarify his relationship with Shabir Ahmed, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang. Abdul Jabbar is the deputy leader of Oldham Council, 25 years former mayor, right-hand man of Jim McMahon MP, provides Andy Burnham with the most votes from any ward so that he can become mayor? Why did Amanda Chadderton refuse to ask Abdul Jabbar 2-3 feet in front of her? A simple question. Why is she deflecting? And Jim McMahon wants to go and have an adjournment debate tomorrow in Parliament where he creates an alternative reality. Ordinarily, by the way, if an MP of a town has these sorts of debates, he consults with the people of the town first. He engages with the people of the town first before he has such a debate. Has he engaged with any one of you? Why did he not turn up to this meeting? Why did he not turn up to this meeting? Let me carry on the next bit. I'll do one last bit and that way we can keep these transmissions relatively short. If you're finding value in this, please, if you're finding value in this, in the work I do, the analysis I provide, please like. There's 61 likes so far. I've got 194 people who are viewing. So if you find value in this, please like, please share, and please consider buying me a coffee. I'm going to do the next bit. I'm going to go and make myself a brew and come back. So you've got time to go and perhaps, support me. Come on, guys. Who else is doing this? Who else is going to do this? I'll be back in a moment. That is true, Yvonne. I need a couple of hundred more subscribers so I can use YouTube more effectively. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I don't know what you're waiting for, people. It's not a big ask. It's not a big ask at all. Thousands watch my content on YouTube. I'll just show you. Let me just show you something. I'm having conversations really with people I shouldn't be having conversations with you about. $8,000 people. 8,000 people in the last month have actually, clicked and watched the content for a number of time. 90,000 people. 90,000 views. 90,000 people. 90,000 people. Do you see? 90,000 people. No, you don't want to do any of that. Because the analytics will mess you up. You don't want to do any of that. You don't want to join twice or any of that. You just want to do it properly. All I'm asking for is not for people to do it twice or any of that. I'm not interested in any of that, but I think by now you can see what sort of person I am. We grow authentically. Speaking of subscriptions, Lynn, let me show you something else in terms of subscriptions. And this is when I do genuinely get upset a bit. I run a blog page. It's on Ghost. It's recusant9.ghost.io. It's where I publish all my stuff. They can't block me on that because it's to all extents and purposes. It's my page. They've tried, but I put my stories up there. And we are... Our subscriptions are down, you can see. So as soon as people have found value in it, and now we're doing it for free, they're going down. I am now earning £408 a month. And that's before the fees. So it's about, take 5% off, so 20 quid. So I'm earning £380 a month. So, yeah. Yes, it does, doesn't it? Oldham. So those are actually my YouTube viewers are my actual viewers. It's not returning viewers and double viewers. It's actually my actual viewers. If you're finding value in this, 66 of you have liked it so far. 214 people are viewing it. My Vimto's too hot. Let me play the next bit.
Quick. Councillor Quigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How to follow that is probably one. But I think how not to read a room is probably best described here tonight. You've heard the public gallery. Imagine what it's like out there in the living rooms and the bedrooms. And, everyone out there is angry. And tonight has just been like an East German Politburo meeting, where you're all just standing there, read from a script, sit down, and that's it. It doesn't answer the questions that people have. And we're only here tonight because of the victims, the parents, the grandparents, and probably the town itself, who have had to drag this council here, kicking, screaming, through 1 leader, 2 leaders, and now this one. It doesn't just happen overnight. It just doesn't happen within a week, a fortnight, a month, or a year. This abuse has been going on for years. And we've seen tonight survivors sat in the gallery, a survivor who came up to the mic, coming from 1981. 1981. And these people aren't lying. These people aren't making it up. These people aren't saying barefaced lies. Because that was what was said to the former deputy leader of the council when she stood up and asked the question. It was barefaced lies, and we're here now to talk about what is essentially a massive scandal of girls as young as 12 and perhaps even younger being raped, sexually abused, and then some more on top. For too long, justice has been denied. And I would say to the victims, if they can, to do go and get re-interviewed by the police. I know they've got no confidence in them after everything that's happened, but do go. And for the CPS to review the cases that they had, to review those cases and see what prosecutions they can bring, because there must be a mountain of evidence and there must be enough reports that either the GMP or others compiled, put together, and perhaps weren't worth prosecuting. We've heard that one before, haven't we? We have heard that one before. But sadly, tonight, Oldham joins an infamous list of towns. From Rotherham to Rochdale to Telford. And it's all because the council, the police, failed to take those reporting this horrific crime seriously. Failed to share vital information between agencies and departments, and failed to support the victims full stop. So where we get this report tonight is why we are here. And Gerard, you say that people committing the abuse are the real criminals. Yes, they are. Absolutely. But so too are those who failed in the duty of care to look after those victims. And what are we going to do about bringing not only misconduct, but criminal prosecutions against these people? If I did, in financial services, a financial crime, I'd be hauled before the courts and lose my job. In fact, Mr. Bowen, you'd probably be the one to haul me off. Because that's how serious they take money. How are we not doing it with children and young victims of this town? So, the questions are this. You'd be glad to hear, probably. Why did the council fail to inform schools, and thus parents, of the risks posed by shisha bars in the meeting on the 24th of October 2013? Why was more weight put on community cohesion rather than on informing the public of matters of public safety? Not only that, if the council can publish a full data set of the ethnicity and age of those found to be abusing CSE victims, because thus far, with the failure of IOPS, and when you try to ask Greater Manchester Police about crime numbers, we always get the same, we don't know. We ain't got a number, we can't do this. So I think it's important that we know where we are now before we start looking in the past, because I think that is where a lot of the problems have been raised, a lot of the questions that have been posed by the public tonight have stemmed from the lack of accessible public information. Can I also ask whether this is the panel, whoever it may be, to confirm how many victims fell through the net of the council, the police, and any other organisation who were subsequently trafficked, raped, and exposed to the grooming in Oldham over a period covered by the review, and if necessary, beyond? And I think, Mr. Mayor, given that you're obviously here tonight, how many reports of CSE were missed by the disaster of the IOPS system? Given that we don't know how many, we know 80,000 crimes were missed, how many of them were victims who may have reported it, or reports that there could have been suspicious activity? Because at the end of the day, if we're about to talk about lessons being learnt, and as we heard about the licensing committee only recently, I think it's about time we knew where we stood on this matter and how much data and how much information has been gathered. And finally, to people like Sam, I'm newly elected, and to the victims who've spoken here tonight, you've probably never had an apology Or if you have, it's always been in writing. We're sorry. We should have done this. We should have done this better. Sam, take them to the cleaners, love, because that's the only way you're going to get justice. Take them through the civil courts, take them through the civil remedies, and if necessary, go all the way to Parliament, because we've had plenty of debates in Parliament, and we've got another one. And it was posed by the member for Ashfield at the last debate, on another meeting, on another cases of CSE. And he posed the question, how many people in public office, behind the scenes, in the councils and the police have been brought to justice? That's the answer, none. So when will we get that justice for these victims? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
He did well. He'll get better. Lewis will get better. It's not his natural, this is not his natural thing, but he did really well. I think both Robert and Lewis, for their maiden speeches, because that's what they essentially were, did really, really well. Now listen to the response. But before you go on to the response, I just want to, what I said he did well and get better is this. I want to just pull out his 3 key points. 1, why were schools not notified? 2, why was community cohesion put ahead of informing parents? So the fear of the far right was used not to tell you. It's in the report. The fear of the far right was used not to tell you or me. And the third point question he's raising, is how many of these child sex offenders are there in Oldham? How many victims are there in Oldham? Because the report doesn't say, it hides it. So he did really, really well. Those are the 3 points. Let's see what they say, and let me rip it to pieces. If you're finding value in this and you're just joining us, my name is Raj Amir. This is a Recusant 9 transmission throughout the week and next week, and God knows how much longer we will go on, but we'll go on for as long as we can. I will rip this assurance review to pieces in a way it has never been ripped to pieces. The careers of Ridgway and Newsom will be over by the time Oldham is through with them. Jim McMahon is attempting to have an adjournment debate in Parliament tomorrow to rewrite history, to say there's nothing to see here and it's time to move on, but worse, for him to try and have us prosecuted. Let's listen to the response.
Councillors, I am conscious of time, and I'm conscious of time, so if you can be concise with your questions, it would be appreciated, because they've still got time for the
We'd prefer if they'd been concise with their answers, or even if they had answered.
Well, can we respond to this one? Better respond to that. Okay. I'm suggesting in response to Councillor Quigg that we invite Gerard to talk about the schools issues, Chris about the police.
So this is completely out of order. This is the council chief executive deciding who's going to answer questions. It's not for him to do so. It's for the mayor to do so. It's not for the chief executive to do so. This is completely out of order. This is outrageous. And what should have happened is a point of order being raised right at this point, because it's not for the chief executive. It's not for a backdoor bullshitter from Blackburn to decide who answers questions we, the public, have asked.
Issues and potentially other Parliament members will contribute then about the wider issues you've raised, but specifically pick up those 2.
Can I say that the information has been routinely shared with schools in 2013?
Okay, the information has been routinely shared with schools. The question was asked about parents. Schools, parents, information has been routinely shared with schools. So it's now the school's fault, he's saying, that they didn't tell. So it's every head teacher. He's shifting responsibility and saying every head teacher in Oldham is now complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. And I will name every head teacher in Oldham. So those of you who are watching this, involved in schools, involved in education, this is not me. This is the Director of Children's Services, Gerard Jones, the Chief Executive, or what's he called? The managing director of Children's Services, shifting the responsibility onto schools.
I couldn't actually give assurance about the details of all of the programmes that were in place at that time.
He couldn't give details about all of the programs that were in place at that time. So what the are you doing sat there? If you, as the managing director of Children and Young People, can't give details of what the interventions were at the time, what are you doing sat at the podium on £10,000 salary a month? I'll get to the report later where I'll show Gerard Jones, and he's not read the report, because if he'd read the report, he would have seen the very same lines I'm going to pull out in a few minutes.
But perhaps I can write to the member afterwards to set out the details of that. Thank you.
So, fudge the question. Fudge the question completely.
Yeah, there was a number of points within the question, and I couldn't stand here and give you an honest answer on whether there was an implication of the IOPS computer system. We all know there were issues with it.
So he's basically saying, yeah, the computer systems at the police were messed up and are likely to have been involved. So he's admitting police failure. He's admitting police failure that led to grooming gang members getting away with it.
However, I would be making anything up if I said it, so I'm not going to sit here and say it. What I can do is we can have a review and have a look and see whether we can find that information and get back to you at a later date. However, what I can reassure you...
He's come to a meeting, the most senior police officer has come to a meeting without any knowledge of how many grooming gang members there are in Oldham, or there were in Oldham, or how many victims of the grooming gangs are. He's come to a meeting to defend himself, to apologise, but he hasn't come with the data. It's not like he didn't know he was coming to this meeting. They've known about this investigation for the last 3 years. And he won't share with you. That's bullshit. That is absolute bullshit. They know. They know how many victims there were. And if they don't know, they definitely know how many victims they know of. And they can say, we have on our records 500 victims. IOPS might have messed something up, but we definitely know 500. And of course, there are all the victims that haven't come forward. He has a number. He has a number of victims and he has a number of perpetrators. And IOPS has got absolutely nothing to do with convictions, by the way. They have that information. They have that information.
The main point of the question is that we will follow all lines of inquiry to wherever they lead us to. And if that leads us to perpetrators, we will implement the full use of the law. Operation Sherwood is up and running. I agree with you.
Yes, Operation Sherwood is up and running and it is attacking victims.
I hope people will come forward and speak to us and give us the opportunity to put right what was wrong in the past.
I would never go and speak to them in the current situation. If I was a victim, or I had any influence of any victims, I would say to you, go nowhere near Operation Sherwood. I would say, add your voice to the demands of a public inquiry so this is done properly, because these people will not go where the evidence leads them. Maggie Oliver said as much during her interviews. Investigation after investigation after investigation. Nothing ever happens. Go and listen to what Maggie Oliver had to say. I do not trust these policemen. The victims have already been failed by these policemen, and they want you to go back to the same people in the same ways so they can shaft you again. That's what's happened in Rotherham. That's what's happened in Rochdale. That's what's happening in Manchester. We want an independent inquiry. We do not trust Chris Bowen or any of his corrupt police officers who are intimidating victims of the grooming gangs. So we've had question 1 answered or dodged to do with schools. Question 3 to do with data dodged. Let's have a look at question 2. Just give me a second and see if they answer
And in order to do that, we do need people to speak to us. So I would implore people to come forward, tell us what's happened, give us everything we need in order to get successful prosecutions to deliver lengthy prison sentences for those who deserve them.
Councillor Birch, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the interest of time, I'll ask my...
Okay. Do you see what they just did? They refused to answer the question specifically about why was community cohesion put ahead of the safety of our children. It's proven, it's in that report. Why was race relations? Now we know it's not community cohesion. We know it's not race relations. We know it's votes. We know it's protecting the block vote. Why was the block vote put ahead? And they have refused to answer that question. Do you see? They refused to answer that question and then tried to shift on to Ross Birch, Neil Wilby's mate, Councillor Birch from Waterhead, who wants to move forward to talking about how things are. I'm sorry, John. This is why. I'm sorry. Bollocks, mate. It's not going to make any difference. Going and getting a... these are the traps that we have fallen into, or groups are falling into time after time after time. There is absolutely no point going and talking to the police and going and talking to the review team. No point whatsoever. We should only be focused on 3 things. Supporting the victims however we can. And that's by amplifying their voices. You put up the victims have come to you. Well, I suggest that, please, you've got a tape, put their testimonies out. Get them to speak to you, John, and put it out and I'll share it. If victims have contacted you, put it out. Let the people of our town and wider hear the harrowing testimonies that was hidden in this review. So that's one. The second thing is we've got to call for a public inquiry. We've got to call for a public inquiry and we've got to pressure for a public inquiry. Talking to the police and the review team is going to do jack shit, mate. They are part of the problem. And the third point has got to be we raise awareness in Royton South of what Amanda Chadderton has done and the Bashfors have helped cover, and we vote them out next May. That's it. We are direct, we are focused, and that's what we do. None of the other distractions. It's a complete waste of time. So they wouldn't answer the community cohesion question. Why votes have been put in ahead. Well, then you guys go to a public meeting. You're more than welcome. Go and push it and put your efforts into it. Best of luck with it. Let me know what the police say to you and what the review team say to you. Let me show you something. Sorry, I just need to change my some settings on my iPad. If you're finding value in this transmission, please like, please share, please consider signing up for a monthly subscription on the on my website where I publish what I do. You can sign up for £3 a month, which is something like 10 pence a day. It's not even that, I think. £5 or £10, depending on what you can afford. And if you can't do that, you can buy me a one-off coffee. Or you can just carry on watching for free. And just taking me. And all I ask then is for you to share. And if you can't do that, 73 of the 254 of you have done it. Yeah, it's not 73 of the 78, I'm afraid, Pauline. I've got 254 people at my end. All you're seeing is the people who are currently watching dead live with us now. Never mind. Let me show you something. Detailed findings on the shisha bars. By late 2010, both Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police were aware of the emerging threat presented by shisha bars and the potential they presented for child sexual exploitation. As early as November 2010, an intelligence report had been submitted by a detective constable in the specialist messenger team stating that 4 young messenger girls were frequenting Cafe Mist shisha bar. So by 2010 they were aware of it. Jim McMahon was leader of the Labour group in 2010. So a chief inspector confirms that these are dodgy, but they don't raise. Yeah. Here's the first bit I want you to look at. There you go. Non-glodic boys. Links to drugs. Okay. With girls. So these are girls. Minors. Child 1 and child 2 in the report. By the way, it's all redacted. They hide all that. Child 3 and child 4. These are the 4 messenger girls that they hide in the report. They don't really share what happened. Confirmation. Confirmation that taxi drivers were going there and meeting children. Confirmation. And raping children. Confirmation. Here we go. You know that internal report that they say they found nothing wrong in the headlines? 22 separate intelligence reports in 2011 and a further 22. So 44 intelligence reports of CSE and shisha bars. And here we go. These intelligence reports were not always being linked to the specialist messenger teams. So the team set up to investigate CSE, the police weren't letting them know. Not always being linked. How many of them were being linked, he doesn't say. How many of them were being linked, he doesn't say. How many of them were being groomed and gang raped, and these stories not going through? Do you see this report? If you analyse the report, you can rip it to shreds. But I'm going to get to the bit I want to get to, but I want to build it up. So please bear with me. and let's get through this. "18 named children." That's all that's what they managed to identify. 18 so far. Mounting evidence. They used the word mounting evidence throughout 2012 that shisha bars continue to present an opportunity to sexual exploitation. So they knew from 2010, right? Here you go. Let me go back. Let me pull this here. By late 2010, Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police were aware of the emerging threat presented by shisha bars and the potential they presented for CSE. They knew in 2010. Confirmation they knew in 2010. Throughout 2010, 2011 and 2012, confirmation of evidence. Interestingly, the taxi driver was found not guilty. He was found not guilty of rape. Have a look at this. The taxi driver was subsequently not found guilty of rape, but he admitted to meeting a child in a shisha bar and to using the taxi for the purposes of sexual activity with the child. So a grown man admitting sexual activity with a child is not rape. And he paid her in food from the supermarket. Two teenage girls, child 11 and child 15, spent the night in the shisha bar and admitted to having sex. February 2012, a multi-agency meeting is called by a sergeant. Increasing concerns. The concerns were to do with children. Police raided one of these places. Second floor, discovered child 6. Alcohol in her possession. Child 7 and child 8. So these places were being used. Confirmed, yeah. 16th of June 2012. Police constable reported seeing a man dragging a child into the rear of a shisha bar. Dragging a child off the street into a shisha bar. Inside the shisha bar was another child. Social services were informed. The council claimed the referral was not received. The account is verified by the police, who are unable to locate a copy of the referral. That referral went missing. How did it go missing? Who was the man? Who was he linked to? How did it just go missing? A parent is suitably concerned that a teenage daughter has been smoking in shisha bars with older Asian men. Although numerous intelligence reports of Asian males and young girls visiting these premises were raised, and although these girls were thought to be vulnerable, the intelligence reports were not forwarded to the messenger teams as they were known messenger subjects. No cover up, people. No cover up. No cover up. Child 2. 14 at the time. Half a litre of vodka with older peers, including her older sister. Private rooms to rent upstairs. July 2012. Remember, now we're 2 years. 2 years. This is 2 years from when police first became aware and the council became first aware. Our children are being dragged off the streets into these shisha bars. They're now renting rooms upstairs. No one's being prosecuted. They're getting away with it. They're dragging kids in off the street. Officers from the council and Greater Manchester Police met. There are serious concerns about the sexual activity going on in the rooms and the potential links to child sex exploitation. Still, we're not told. The council and the police know that there are serious risks, and they've not told the schools to tell parents. Hidden from us. October 2012. Intelligence report. It's a police intelligence report. Young girls of about 12 to 13 years of age inside. Young girls. Doesn't say how many. Young girls. But it says they're 12 and 13 years. Rooms available upstairs. What are the rooms available for? Important, significant. Confirmation. Senior councillors and officers in both Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council were increasingly aware of such concerns in 2012. They knew. By now, senior councillors. The term senior councillors is specifically used. They won't say which councillors, but senior councillors. The leader of Oldham Council in 2012, yeah. You know. You know. Apparently, and this is their get out, even though Councillor W raised concerns, and I think that's Huey, he didn't raise enough questions about the threat of sexual exploitation. So that's their get out. Even though they know. Even they know what's going on. Suspicion. It's not a suspicion. It's already been evidenced. Do you see? I've gone through evidence. It's not a suspicion. Linked to organised crime, known drug dealers, child sex exploitation, known child sex exploitation. It is evident, therefore, that the threat presented by shisha bars was support. Yeah. So they knew. They're confirming they knew. Street angels. That woman, that reverend or whatever she's called, yeah? The woman who did the prayers, this is the hypocrisy. She's the Street Angels woman. She received funding from the council. And at the time, clearly before Street Angels became dependent upon council funding, we did see many young girls going in. A moth to the flame. They often looked too young. Group of girls in school uniform. They've hidden the name of the school's name. Group of girls in school uniform, 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. Still, schools weren't told. Confirmed in 2012. So by this point, it wasn't vulnerable girls. These are girls in school uniform. They'd expanded their operations and girls in school uniform. Greater Manchester Police throughout 2013. So 2010, remember, this is the third year. 1 piece of intelligence per month. No longer the ad hoc, one piece of intelligence per month. Chief Inspector A confirms that these shisha bars could potentially be CSE locations. A children's home emails a social worker to report concerns in respect to what's known as Child 13, who with another young person had mentioned to going to shisha bars. So children in children's homes are now also disclosing. Shisha cafe bars are letting out rooms for a few hours. These rooms are then used inappropriately. What do we think by means? What do we think they mean by inappropriately? There's a specific case here. Confirmation, we have had multiple meetings and discussions which really do not come up with a plan. The risks around CSE are massive. The risks around CSE are massive. 3 years later now, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, we're into our 4th year. You can see we're into our 4th year. Still not a single parent told, not a single school informed. Councillor Yu admits he knows what's going on, because is there any learning from Bradford, Blackburn, as these two local authorities have had shisha bars for many years? What he means are child prostitution dens, child abuse dens. These idiots, I don't know who this councillor is, by the way, wanted to use sending children. He wanted to send in children. Possibly using Oldham Youth Council or children from another area. He wanted to use children going in to see what would happen to them. That was the strategy they were discussing. They wanted to send children in to be raped or at risk of rape. Tenth of May 2013 now. Oldham Council, local strategic borough business manager, that's a safeguarding board. Oldham College, Oldham Sixth Form College, Fire and Rescue Service, Chief Inspector. Confirmation. Confirmation. Chief Inspector A would write a problem profile to present to politicians. Leader of the council at the time was Jim McMahon. MP was Michael Meacher. Here, I've highlighted this bit, 4.3.8. The minutes noted that schools would be requested to notify parents that these premises were not what they were being portrayed as and not necessarily as safe as they were led to believe. You can see it straight away. Here, confirmation at this meeting. And so we cleared this meeting was on the 10th of May. Involved the council, the local strategic safeguarding, children's board, Sixth Form College, Oldham College, even fire and rescue and the police. Confirmation, the minutes noted, so it's specifically in the minutes, that schools would be requested to notify parents. You can see it there. Notify parents. That's you and me. That was 10th of May. A meeting on June 2013. Confirmation from everything they've seen when the schools met. Head teachers. They have seen minutes of the head teachers of the 24th of October 2013. So look, this meeting, 10th of May 2013. By the time the schools can discuss it, it's the 24th of October, nearly 6 months later. And 3 years, over 3 years later, from when they became concerned about our children being groomed and gang raped, there was finally a meeting with head teachers in schools. We can only conclude that the intention articulated at the meeting of the 10th of May 2013 to ask schools to notify parents of the risks was not carried out. They confirm hidden in the small print of this report, and this is why I am here to read every bloody line of this report. On the 24th of October 2013, head teachers finally met, and it was an agenda item. This is over 3 years after children are being, the police and the council confirmed it's a problem. Senior councillors confirmed it's a problem. Kids are seen dragged off the streets. Kids seen in school uniforms. They meet 3 years later with the head teachers, and on the agenda item where it is to discuss it, the review team are forced to admit, in one little line buried in there, we can only conclude that the intention articulated at the meeting on the 10th of May 2013 to ask schools to notify parents of the risks was not carried out. Gerard Jones claims schools were told. the managing director for children and young people claims schools were told. Here, extracted from their very own report that they were defending, is confirmation that the information was withheld from parents. For over 3 years, the council and the police knew that our children were being groomed and gang raped, dragged off the streets, piled with vodka, and the information was kept from us. But don't you dare call it a cover-up. Don't you dare call it a cover-up. I'm on much longer than I thought. It's nearly 2 hours, so my apologies. If you are finding value in the work that I do, please like, please subscribe, please share, and if you can, please support my work financially, or at the very least sign up for a free subscription on the Ghost website where I publish all of my work. I have a trial on the 15th of August. Greater Manchester Police still have all of my computer equipment. This is all begged, borrowed, or fundraised for separately. They are desperate to shut me down, which is why there's a debate in Parliament tomorrow where Jim McMahon is going to attempt to criminalise me further. I have exposed and will continue to expose that this report is a sham. But to Jim McMahon and his assistants and those in the Labour Party who are watching and listening and want to get this report over the line tomorrow and hide what's really gone on, I have 3 points I'd like to raise. How can an assurance review provide any assurance when it set out not to speak to a single one of the victims? The one victim it spoke to, Sam, they were forced to do so when Maggie Oliver bypassed the review framework and contacted Newsom and Ridgway herself. The other 10 cases in there, what happened to them is hidden from us, and those children, they were never approached for testimony, they were never provided the opportunity to provide testimony, and the only evidence in there is the evidence that the very agencies who have failed them have presented. How is that possible? How is it possible for Jim McMahon to move on, or Debbie Abrams to move on, or Angela Rayner to move on, when it is now confirmed that Shabir Ahmed not only worked for Oldham Council, but he was known to senior councillors who are still sat in that council chamber today who assisted him? How is it possible for anyone to do anything other than demand a full judicial public inquiry? And finally, it's in the report, repeatedly and demonstrated. We, as parents, were not told what had happened. The people of this town were not told what had happened. And it was kept from us in this report, confirmed, for fear of community cohesion and race relations. That is no justifiable reason to hide from the people of this town that our children were being dragged off the streets into shisha bars where they were being groomed and gang raped, as confirmed in this report. Hidden. And if you don't read this report, which most of you won't, and it's fine, and you read just the executive summary or the headlines from Newsom's speech, the contents of the report do not match the conclusions and in no way match the presentations. If you find value in my work, share the word. And if you want to go and do your own thing, go and do your own thing. And if I can help you, I will do. For those who don't know me, my name is Raja Mia. I do have an MBE. I was awarded an MBE at 29 years of age. I am a child of Oldham. I grew up in Westwood on Widdop Street, where I lived there for many years with my family. Went to Richmond Infant School, Richmond Junior School, Grange Sixth Form. Part of my life, I even ran the bar at the Light of Bengal on Union Street. My town, my people. Very, very, it's not good evening. Very, very good afternoon.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.